Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into something that could totally revolutionize how AI apps get built. It's called the Model Context Protocol. So, is this the real deal or just another flash in the pan? Let's get into it.
So, why are we even talking about this? Well, it all starts with a massive headache that pretty much every AI developer is dealing with right now. We're talking about a tangled mess of code that's just a nightmare to write and even worse to keep running.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get into this whole glue code problem. Then, we'll talk about AI's big USB-C moment. You'll see what I mean. We'll peek under the hood to see how this thing actually works. And finally, we'll ask the big question. Is this all hype or is it the real future?
Okay, Section 1, the AI glue code problem. To really get why we need something new, you gotta understand how we ended up in this tangled mess in the first place.
You know, it's pretty wild how fast things have moved. Just a little while ago, we had these pure LLMs that were basically just smart encyclopedias. They only knew what they were trained on. Then we got clever and built these agentic frameworks to connect them to the real world, giving them tools, letting them access live data. But, and this is a big but, that created a whole new problem. Every single one of those connections had to be custom built, making the whole system super fragile and a total mess to manage.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine you ask an AI for a quick equity report comparing, say, NVIDIA and Tesla. Sounds simple, right? Well, this exact request is where a standard language model just hits a wall.
So the LLM can tell you what NVIDIA and Tesla do. Sure, that's baked into its training data. But ask for the latest, up-to-the-minute stock price? No way. Or what about a private company report sitting on your internal server? Absolutely not. To make any of that happen, a developer has to sit down and write custom code to hook the AI up to something like the Yahoo Finance API or your company's own database.
And that right there, all that custom code that's written just to connect the AI to all these different tools and data sources, that's what we call glue code. It's the stuff that lets the LLM actually do things in the real world, like talk to an API or search a file. And this, folks, is where it becomes a total nightmare. Because it's not just one developer writing this stuff. It's every single developer reinventing the wheel, writing their own version of this glue code for their own app. It's a massive waste of time. But even worse, this code is incredibly brittle. Think about it. If Yahoo Finance decides to update its API tomorrow, boom, potentially thousands of AI apps that depend on it just break. And every single one has to be patched by hand.
All right, so that's the problem. A big, tangled mess. So what's the solution? This brings us to our next section, and honestly, a pretty brilliant analogy. AI's USB-C moment. Seriously, think about it. Remember that drawer you used to have, crammed with a dozen different chargers for every gadget? And then USB-C came along, and poof, one cable to rule them all. That is exactly what the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, wants to be for AI. Instead of a tangled mess of custom connectors for every single tool, you get one universal, standardized protocol. Everything just plugs in. It's simple, it's robust, and it's so much easier to manage.
Okay, so we get the why. It's the USB-C for AI. But how does it actually work? Let's pop the hood and see what's going on.
It's actually pretty elegant. You can think of it like a four-step handshake. First, your AI app, the client, goes up to a server, let's say it's Google Maps, and asks, hey, what can you do? The server then hands back a perfectly standardized menu of its tools and capabilities. The LLM is smart. It collects all these menus from all the different servers it can talk to, so it has this complete catalog of all its powers. Then, when you give it a command, it just looks at its menu and intelligently picks the exact right tool for that specific job.
And this is the really cool part, the secret sauce, if you will. Every single tool announces itself with a standardized description. It's written in a way the LLM can just read. It's just language. So the model uses its incredible language skills to understand what you want, read the descriptions of all the available tools, and make the connection all by itself. It figures out, oh, you want a hiking trail? I need to use the Search Places tool from the Google Maps server. No custom code needed. So when you boil it down, any server that speaks MCP can offer three main things. First, there are tools. These are the action verbs, like search something or fetch a web page. Second, you have resources. This is the knowledge base. Think of a specific PDF file or a whole database. And finally, you have prompts, which are like pre-built recipes for common tasks, just to make sure the AI stays on track.
Okay, so this all sounds amazing, right? But what does it mean for the future? Is this a slam dunk? Are we just in the hype phase? Let's talk about it. Look, the excitement is definitely real, but we also need to keep our feet on the ground. This quote from Code Basics kind of nails it. I believe we are in early days. MCP has a ton of potential for sure, but we're at the absolute beginning of this story. How it's all going to play out? Well, that's something we're all going to find out together.
And this chart really lays it out. The potential? Sky high. It could completely change the game for developers. But the reality of its current adoption? Yeah, it's still pretty low. But here's the silver lining. Developer excitement is really starting to build. And as you know, that's often the spark that gets these things off the ground.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Is this the standard that finally untangles AI development? Well, the Model Context Protocol is aiming squarely at a huge, very real problem that developers face every single day. But here's the thing, its success isn't really about how clever the tech is. It's all about adoption. The real question is, will the big players, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, and the entire community of developers actually get behind this one single standard? Their answer will decide if this becomes a footnote or if it's truly AI's USB-C moment. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.